Welcome into the Sports Objective Podcast. I'm Dave Richmond along with Bubba Rosenbaum. How are you, sir?
Doing well, Dave. How are you?
Good. I want to say hello to Kyle Barber. Maybe he'll join us here. He's on the screen. It's like Weekend at Bernie's meets Jay and Silent Bob. So we'll see if we'll do that. And a lady that's not silent, we got a very special guest, right, Bubba?
Yeah, welcome back in from the Tulsa World with the Pirates playing the Golden Hurricane on Saturday to preview that matchup with Tulsa. I'm very excited to have Kelly Hines back with us. Kelly, how are you?
I am doing great. I'm so sorry I do not have a face.
You do have a face, just not on the screen right now, but we're glad to have you in and talking Tulsa hoops. It's been like every other, I think, team. There's been a roller coaster ride. Does it make your job more exciting, more fun to have where all these, not that we want COVID issues, but it's definitely more storylines this year?
Yeah, and it's just kind of weird because I think teams are struggling to get into a normal flow, and I think some of that is contagious. Like no pun intended with like virus, but I think it's difficult for me sometimes to you know get serious about previewing games and all of that, because I'm like, are these games going to be played? After experiencing what went on with Tulsa's football season, I had to get at least to Thursday in any given game week to start to think that the game would actually happen. So I think that's kind of carried over to basketball to some extent. It just seems like every single day the conference is announcing postponements, rescheduled games, all of that, and it just got a weird feel to it.
Yeah, Kelly, have you kept account? How many times have you prepped for a game and started a story only to have it go off or not?
Yeah, I've lost count. I typically wait until the last possible minute to start on anything, just because I don't know if it's going to happen. And I think you're seeing, especially with basketball, it's going to affect teams longer. You see like what's going on with USF, and it's like they haven't played in forever, and Memphis went a couple weeks without a game. For that to happen to a basketball team, it's crazy. It's affecting basketball schedules obviously a lot more.
Yeah, taking a look at Frank Hayes Ball Club, they got off to a 1-3 start and then won 6 in a row, including a thrilling 65-64 win there in Tulsa over number 5 Houston. But since they have dropped 3 of their last 4, including their last 2. So just what's been going on in these last few games with Frank Hayes' team?
It's been a recurring thing with Frank's teams to have a pretty substantial win streak in conference play. And every time it kind of catches me off guard, because leading up to, the win streak, things are kind of shaky, and then they get on a run and you're like, wow, this team might be pretty good. But then oftentimes there are these other moments where you go back to your original thinking that, oh, it may be a bit of a rebuilding year, maybe it's that's definitely where we are now. I think definitely, dealing with some personnel issues, and that they are not getting a lot out of some of their key guys, and now they're trying to figure out which direction they're going to go. And it's almost February, like time is running out, and I think a big part of that is just not having a normal non-conference build up to the conference portion of the schedule. It's just taken a lot longer. You're going a lot deeper into conference play, trying to figure things out. And so, there were some really good wins during that win streak. Obviously, beating Houston, that was crazy. And then, beating Cincinnati on the road, which hadn't happened in a million years. And, there were back-to-back road games in which Tulsa never trailed. And then these last 3 road games, Tulsa didn't lead at any point in those games, and didn't play well really at all. So it's definitely a roller coaster in that regard, in addition to all of the COVID stuff, just not having any momentum right now. And that's scary when you're going into another road game.
That is crazy. And then with everything going on, I'm wondering it looks like we will have conference tournaments, and then the NCAA basketball tournament in Indianapolis area. but it seems like with it's going to be, I think, a wild ride to say the least with February, don't you think, with the conference?
Oh, I think so for sure. I mean, I think um, you're going to see teams that will be affected by COVID at a really bad time. I mean, there's never a
Yeah.
good time to get COVID, but I think that you're going to see teams, that might have a chance in a conference tournament. Like how's that going to go if leading up to that, they go on pause, they have games postponed. I just think that once you get into, late February, early March, you can't really have games rescheduled at that point. So I think that there'll be games that end up not getting played, and then for seeding purposes, that's really going to hurt. I just think it's going to be extremely dramatic as we get closer to the conclusion. Not to mention there are going to be really good games, and you know. Most teams in the conference are not having fans at their home games, or if they have any, it's very limited. And so it's just going to have a weird feel to it all the way around. It's not going to be anything like what it normally is, but I still think there will be close games that, will impact seeding, and that will have a big effect on, which teams get into the tournament.
No doubt about it, especially with that's another thing too, is the tournament is coming up. Speaking of the NCAA, just based on what you've seen, I'm looking at probably, what do you think about a three bid league this year with the American? What my gut feeling is.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think, you know, going into the season, people were counting out Wichita State because of everything they had going on. And so when you have a team like that, that's an established program, if you're expecting them to be down, the national perception, I think, took a hit just going into the year. So I think it's difficult when you're trying to climb back from that. I think the American it's always going to be a struggle to some extent, but I think there are some really good teams in this league. It's just, in this, climate, it's just really hard to get a feel for where everyone is. I mean, Houston, I think, is just, probably head and shoulders above everyone else. And that's what really blows my mind about Tulsa winning that game. And, you see what happened with Caleb Mills, one of their best players. He quit the team right after that. And then, I honestly think they're better now. I mean, they're playing at a really high level. And, I've seen people say, oh, that's a Final Four team, which obviously, you can be a potential Final Four team and not get anywhere close to the Final Four. But I really enjoy watching that team play. But I think that there are some sleeper teams in the league. Memphis is really unpredictable. You just never know with some of these teams how things are going to turn out.
Yeah, I'm taking a look at Tulsa, and then they're led by senior guards Brandon Rochelle, and then also Elijah Joyner. Rochelle averaging 14 and a half and 6.5, and then Joyner 10 and 5. So just talk about the play of those two, how they've been playing here recently. I'm guessing, have they struggled since the team's been struggling?
I don't think that they've struggled as much as some of the more like role player types. But in certain moments they've gotten into foul trouble, or whatever else, they've had injuries, been banged up, and when those guys are not on the court, it can be a real struggle. I mean, they have other options, but those are definitely the two go-to guys. And Brandon is a guy who can do just about everything for you. Very versatile. Elijah Joyner is definitely like the floor general you need out there. But when one of those guys has to go to the bench, I mean, that's been probably the biggest issue, is not getting enough production from the other guys. And that's where I think, when I mentioned looking at other guys to, maybe get more playing time than what they've had, I don't mean those two. I think they'll still play a lot, as much as possible. But I think you're going to see maybe some other guys used. Got to figure out something at this point, because what's happened these last few games clearly has not been working.
And Kelly, seems like we're always asking about the coaches in football, basketball, but what's the reaction with Frank Haith? It looks like things were going really, really well, and then I know a lot of it's just COVID issues, right?
Yeah, and I think that that's really disrupted things for Tulsa, because the games that have been affected to this point have been home games, and so you are missing out on the chance to generate some momentum. Things were going really well for 6 games in a row, and then 7 of 10 games on the road is the stretch that they're in now, and man, that's tough. And I think when you're struggling with your confidence, when you've had gaps in the schedule because of other teams' COVID issues, that's when it really starts to get a little dicey. And that's where we are now. So I think when the team is winning, the fans love Frank. When they go on the road and don't play well at all at Temple, that's when you're definitely seeing people saying this could be the beginning of the end, which it might be, it might not, who knows. But we all know how fickle fans can be, and all it takes is a couple losses in games that they probably should have won, and then that's when the fans are ready for there to be a change.
Yeah, Kelly, you talk about those road results. Early on, you guys, Tulsa went to Memphis and won. They went to USF and won. They went to Cincinnati and won. But those 3 consecutive road losses that you referenced, by 19 at Wichita State, by 27 at Houston, and then most recently on Tuesday night at Temple by 9 points. So, like you said, the road woes have certainly been very real for Frank Case Ball Club. East Carolina has really struggled as well. They've dropped 4 straight. Have really struggled to shoot the basketball here lately after being much improved. They were shooting about 38% from 3, leading the American, but have really cooled off these last 2 or 3 ball games. And I noticed that Tulsa is only shooting 29% from beyond the arc.
Yeah, I mean, super streaky, and really a couple guys who they expected to come in and be really good shooters. Curtis Haywood and Keyshawn Embry-Simpson, they've really struggled lately, and when they don't have a lot of confidence right now, I think it affects them, all over the court, not just with their shooting. And that's why I think, there'll probably be some changes with the lineups, with the rotation, because, they just can't afford to, especially, I mentioned they haven't even had a lead in these last 3 road games. Like, basically showed up, did not have a chance. And it's because they take a lot of threes early in the game. They, don't make them, and things get out of hand really fast. I think that's what happened in the Houston game. They got blown out. They went like several minutes into the game without attempting a 2-pointer. They were just throwing up threes. They felt like they needed to shoot a lot of threes to have a chance in that game, I guess, and that did not work out well. They're just not shooting the ball well right now, especially on the road. That's going to be an issue. They really need to get back home and figure some things out, but obviously have a road game before that happens.
And also, piggybacking off of what we were saying earlier regarding the American and how many teams were going to get into the big dance, Dave, you were mentioning 3. It could be just Houston. I mean, just looking at the standings, but it's really going to hinge on what happens in February. We talked about the Memphis Tigers. They've been playing much better of late. They're 5-2, sitting in second place, a half game ahead of Wichita State, who is 4-2. And just looking at these overall records, the American could be a 1 big lead, and they could be 2 or 3.
Yeah, and I think what will hurt is if those other teams behind Houston, if they get a couple more losses, because that can happen. I think SMU could beat anybody in the league. I think that there'll be more losses. You almost have to be flawless from this point on to stay even in the conversation. Obviously, it depends what happens in other leagues, but I think it's going to be really tough if they get a couple more losses, Memphis or Wichita State or whoever, to even, be in the conversation.
And Kelly, we've been talking a lot on the show. It looks like there's a chance that they may not even have an NIT, right? So, or
Yeah.
because of with the NCAA running the NIT, the 32 team invitational tournament, that's kind of bad for those of us that are, as far as American, where we have some teams that are quality teams. They just may not make that there's not even a bubble to talk about this year, I guess.
Yeah, and that's, looking back to last season, Tulsa seemed like, a shoo-in for the NIT. And that was, for a program like Tulsa that hadn't been in any postseason in several years, that was a huge deal to, have a chance to play in the NIT. And you never know how that's going to go, how players are going to be fired up for it or not fired up for it. But, it's the 40-year anniversary this season of Tulsa winning the NIT. For the Hurricane program, that's something that is looked back on as a really big deal in program history. And so, to not be able to have a chance like that, especially in consecutive years, that's disappointing. And for a coach like Frank Haith, who, hasn't had a lot of postseason appearances at Tulsa, those are 2 seasons possibly that you don't even have that chance.
It's going to be crazy, but hopefully we can have you back. Certainly when it's around tournament time, I love to have you back, and I appreciate you coming on. Bubba, do you have something else?
Yeah, obviously we had you on, Kelly, to talk about Saturday's matchup with East Carolina and Tulsa, but this is the first time we've had you on since football season concluded, of course, and with that being the case, talk about the season that Tulsa had, advancing to the championship game, and obviously Coach Montgomery was coaching for his job, and he certainly saved it. So where do things stand with his contract?
I am guessing that he's going to get a 1-year extension. That's still something that, hasn't been resolved yet. And sorry, there's a very loud train. I don't know if you hear that.
It's all good.
But, just looking back on that football season, like, that was just the craziest season I have ever covered in any sport. Just, the dramatic conclusions, the schedule disruptions, and then, the bowl game. When the game had just ended, and I was just like in my head thinking, oh, what a weird season this was. And then I looked down on the field and there's a huge fight breaking out. I'm like, 2020 just had that one final twist to get in. And that whole scene was just crazy. And that was the last day of the year. And that's the last memory I will have of 2020, which was just an insane year. All the way around. But, it was a very memorable season. It was entertaining to cover. And I still, we're like a month removed from it. I still can't believe everything that happened in that football season for Tulsa. But, signing days just around the corner, and we're looking ahead to 2021. And, fortunately for Tulsa, there are, most of the seniors have decided to come back. So certainly on the defense, they're looking to be, obviously you won't have an All-American linebacker, the best defensive player in the country. Zaven Collins has moved on, but pretty much everybody else will be back. So I think that's really exciting for Tulsa to, try to figure out some things on offense in the offseason, but expect for your defense to, really build on what they did in 2020, which was a good year for them.
And I think he's a good coach, and definitely we'll see how it works out. But it's going to be speaking of an interesting year. It all depends on how many people get the vaccine, and a lot of stuff for fans. And it's been crazy, I'm sure, in Oklahoma as it is in North Carolina with that kind of stuff, especially with for us, East Carolina baseball team is one of nationally ranked 13th, and you can't have fans. I mean, it's just crazy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's there's still so many things to be figured out. COVID has been horrible here in Oklahoma because people don't really want to wear masks all the time, and just not always adhering to guidelines. But you have to think that we're like nearing a finish line. That's what I tell myself every day.
Yep. looks like around the start of football season is we'll keep our fingers crossed we can finally eradicate the virus. We'll see how it plays out. Kelly, how can we get your work? Again, thank you so much for coming on tonight with us. A lot of fun as always. Love the visit, and keep up the good work. If your boss has a Zoom or not.
Oh yeah, my boss would definitely want me to direct people to tulsaworld.com. We love our web views. That is a priority these days. So that's a good place to find my work. I'm also on Twitter, Kelly Hines TW.
All right, thank you, Kelly. As always, you've been good with us, good to us for the last few years of the show. It means a lot. And come back on soon. Don't be a stranger.
Okay, I'll figure out my picture next time.
Okay, cool. All right. See you later.
I'll see y'all.
Bye bye.